Welcome back to Unshakable Pursuit. I'm Nati Bulcho, and today I'm actually here with a special guest, Sam Z. What's going on,
I'm
bro?
doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on.
Sure.
Really excited to have you here. Today we're tackling a topic that often is treated as a problem to be solved for a lot of us, rather than a season to be savored. And we're going to be talking about singleness. And I'm joined by a brother who has been there with me in the trenches, someone whose counsel I value deeply. We've shared a lot of deep and long, thoughtful
Yes, we
conversations
have.
on this topic and many others. And I thought that you'd be a great person to bring on and really just hear your heart, hear your insights on this topic. And so thank you again for being here, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for this conversation. And I think it's going to be a really interesting one and something that a lot of guys, deal with, struggle with, honestly, like resent a lot of times. But one that I think singleness, especially if you deal with it, if you handle it, steward that season well in your life, I think sets you up for the future. So
Hmm.
before we jump into it, I'm just curious for you, as someone who, has ministered and mentored to a lot of guys, navigated the season yourself. What about this topic is one that you were like, you know what, hey, yeah, this is something I'd love to speak on a little bit.
Um, I think that this is imperative for all people, particularly for men. I once heard someone say that, for example, loneliness is not the absence of affection, but the absence of direction.
Mm,
And so I think for a lot of men, an extension of their maybe frustration or agitation with being single um, is really just a distraction from something that's, I think, deeper.
mm,
And so I think it's so important. I draw a parallel between spiritual fitness and physical fitness. I think there's such a strong parallel. And so um, anytime there's a deviation from simple diet um, and training, that's what leads down to a path of just getting out of shape.
yeah,
It's really not that deep, right?
yeah.
And so I think it's some very synonymous, spiritually speaking. Anytime that we deviate from our relationship with God, we're going to come across voids, and we will try to fill those voids with many other things, or we will mistake the intensity of the voids we're feeling
Hmm,
and think it's something else.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I think that's particularly important for men now, in our generation now. So,
Hey man, you're coming in with the quotes already. Loneliness is not the absence of affection, it's the absence of direction.
yes, for
Well, I
sure.
gotta figure out if I'm which one I'm missing now, because that was good. And it's interesting, Sam. We often pray for the woman that God has for us,
Hmm.
but we rarely pray, or at least not to that degree, to become the men
Hmm.
that God would have us become for the woman that God has
Hmm.
for us, right?
Hmm.
And we oftentimes treat singleness like it's a waiting room,
Hmm.
or honestly like a punishment of some
Hmm.
sort. I think that's the way that guys see it a lot. But today we really want to reframe that and see that singleness is actually a season for formation.
Hmm.
There's a lot that God has to form within us,
Hmm.
right? That He wants to do in us and then work through us.
Sure.
And so, wanted to really focus this kind of first part of this discussion on the internal work, right?
Hmm.
That we have to do
Hmm.
to make sure that we're stewarding this season well. So if you're a man who feels behind, or you're battling those quiet aches of loneliness, or you're dating just to fill a void, hopefully this episode will be one that blesses you. And so let's jump in here, Sam. We've often heard people call singleness a gift,
Hmm.
but for many guys listening, it does feel like that waiting room.
Hmm.
And when people hear, that singleness is a gift, it's usually from those who are married or dating, and you just kind of roll your eyes if you're single, right?
Hmm.
And so, how do we practically stop looking at this season as one that is a gap to be filled, but actually a season where things can be formed really well within us?
I think there's a huge distraction in the notion that another human will relieve loneliness,
Mm,
will give you purpose, I think a lot of these things are fundamentally to be found in God, and these are not things that we haven't heard before. But again, with the parallel to physical fitness, no matter how out of shape people are, or what spectrum of out of shape they are, it the remedy is always these few disciplines,
Mm,
and right, and so um, I think everything has to start from God.
yeah.
Something that I believe wholeheartedly is if you diligently seek the face of God, you won't miss what's in His hand. You can seek what's in His hand, and I think He'll give it to you,
Mm,
but you may miss His face,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think the most important thing is to have a diligent pursuit for the face of God.
Mm,
Um, and I think if you seek His face diligently and seriously, you'll there's a peace and there's a joy and there's a divine rest
mm,
inside, right? That you'll experience, and I think a lot of these things will be given to you.
mm.
But yeah, first and foremost, it all comes back down to our relationship with God.
When you say like diligently seek God's face, practically, right? What does that look like for you? And maybe what are the blessings you've experienced out of that, or even like, I don't know, encouragement in moments where, you might feel discouraged in that season.
I think it's important to have your private discipline. I think it's also very much important to have those disciplines established within the framework of a community,
Mm,
like having other men that
yeah,
are after God
yeah,
with the same level of intensity,
yes,
with the same level of hunger.
yes.
I think that's important because a lot of times, if there's someone who's really not as hungry or not as about seeking after God, that can kind of have its influences, right?
For sure.
So someone who's diligently after God, hungry for God, and
Yeah.
seeking God at the same level of intensity. And I think again, the basics, what we read out of Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus talked about, when you fast, when you pray, when you give. And then a fourth one would be, meditating on the scriptures.
Yeah.
I think just those four things. Again, same thing when it comes to physical fitness. When I talk to men and women that are in just top-notch shape,
Yeah.
it's always some variation of the things we know, right? Diet and exercise. That's what it
Hmm.
comes down to. And so I think the same thing spiritually. There's no secret to getting close to God. There's no secret to pursuing Him. It's just doing those things. And then I think the biggest challenge is
Yeah.
consistency,
Yeah.
and just doing it consistently with with your brothers around you. I there's a beautiful verse that I loved in Luke chapter 22 where Jesus was speaking to Peter
Mm,
and he said, Satan has desired you
yes.
that he may sift you like wheat,
Yes.
but I've prayed for you.
Mm,
And when you are converted, strengthen your brothers. And I thought that was such an interesting thing for Jesus to say because he was expecting Peter to go strengthen his brothers because he prayed for Peter to be strengthened. And I thought, how easy would it have been for Jesus to have simply prayed for the brothers to be strengthened?
hmm.
But he said, no, I prayed for you. Now you go and strengthen your
Yeah.
brothers. And
Yeah.
so I think that speaks to the power of community, the
Yeah.
power of fellowship with other brothers. And so seeking God diligently is imperative, but you don't want to do it in isolation. I think it's important to have a band of brothers around you who are, pursuing God with you.
Yeah, I think the spiritual disciplines point you bring up is a
Mm-hmm.
great one. And the community piece is also huge, and can serve as a point of encouragement too when we get
Sure,
discouraged.
sure.
And I think as I'm thinking about it, sometimes the tough thing is also it's hard to like you have to reframe how you measure success,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it can be very easy to almost turn it into a formula, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if I do these things,
Mm-hmm.
that should mean I find my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not finding my wife, I'm failing. Rather than measuring like the growth that I've had in my relationship with God and seeing like, hey, my measure of success is actually formation,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually becoming more mature in my faith. I'm becoming closer to God. I'm becoming more disciplined. I'm becoming more consistent,
Mm-hmm.
which is all setting me up to be the man that can lead a household well in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be my measure of success. And when God brings along someone, like, awesome.
Yeah.
But like, I'll be content knowing that I'm still forming in this phase, right? And I think the tough thing is a lot of guys don't think about spiritual formation as the, you know, as a great end goal of the singleness phase. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about let me just get out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm curious for you or like something like your friends and things, how do you think about, what success looks like in this stage of life? And like when you think about, hey, I'm stewarding my singleness well, right? What are some of those markers for you to be able to like feel good about the way that you're using this season?
Yes. I first off would want to say I think sometimes there can be the illusion that, you know, getting into a relationship will relieve a lot of these deeper heart issues.
Yeah.
And we've all heard that quote, the only thing worse than being single and lonely is being married and lonely.
Ooh.
And so, I think it can be a shock to a lot of people to get married and to realize that a lot of the issues they were having in their singleness,
Carry over.
they carried right over and maybe were maximized in their union.
And now there's someone else that's like, oh, I see it. So now it's public. Public as in like that other person sees it too, right?
Yeah.
And so that's tough because in your singleness you can hide it,
Mhm.
right? And you can excuse it.
Mhm.
But now you have someone that's going to hold you accountable.
Yes, absolutely. And so anything you neglect
Mm.
in your season of singleness doesn't disappear because you're in a different relational season,
Yeah.
right? And so there has to be that grounding in falling in love with God, pursuing after Him diligently. And again, I think one of the biggest, uh, for me anyway, the biggest signs of success in that regard, in terms of that relationship with God, is for me the peace that I experience,
Yeah.
the joy, the gladness, the peace and gladness that you feel within you as a result of having that relationship with God and being in alignment with Him. Because I think joy that comes from God and peace that comes from God, they tend to be. I mean, my experience, it tends to be somewhat odd in its orientation because it's like you'll just feel this deep inner calm, or this elation,
Yeah.
and generally we're accustomed to allocating that feeling to something that's happened externally as opposed to the result of some inner, the presence of God within you, right? And so I think when the peace of God is there, when the joy of God is there, that doesn't mean that there's not other things that, hey, you have a desire for, you have a longing for, but I think there's a contentment. There's a very deep contentment.
Yeah.
And for me, that's kind of how I measure success. It's like, hey, Lord, I'm following after you, and I'm not just following after you or serving you, but I'm seeking you. And yeah, there's just that great deep-seated peace and gladness that is inside that just removes any kind of voids inside, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And it almost sounds also like you're in a place of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're aligned to God's word, His will, His precepts and principles, and you're living according to that. And so now your measure of success is like, man, am I living according to God's will? So
Mm-hmm.
if it's God's will and God's time, if someone comes around, awesome. But until that happens, I'm not just gonna like lay around and just like wallow in like whatever sadness or something.
For sure.
Like I'm gonna make sure that I'm using this time well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that you can do
Mm-hmm.
in your singleness that you're not gonna be able to do
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship or when you get married. It's funny because I'm a big travel guy,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was joking with my friends the other day because I think we're coming up on 30 countries now,
Wow.
and
Wow.
and so the funny thing is, I was like, yeah, the one good thing about singleness is like I was just in Vietnam last week. I look in the mirror, let's go to Vietnam, and I just go.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things that I can freely do and move around, and obviously it'd be great to have a partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not a season that I am like gonna look back at sad about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm gonna look back at it like, man, I was free. I got to do a lot of fun things. To your point, I got to personally develop on my own in my secret place, in my quiet place, strengthen my relationship with God,
Yeah.
pour into a lot of brothers, have brothers like you pour into me, right? Like when you're, married, I feel like they're like, yo, Sam, let's grab lunch or let's grab coffee. So like, I gotta go check with, which is fine. Like,
Yeah.
I pray to God. I pray that I have that happen one day, right?
Yeah.
But it is different,
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious for you, like, what are some of the things that you enjoy most right now in your season of singleness that like, man, in the future it's going to be hard to be this free?
This might be a surprise to a lot of people, but I am an introvert.
Come on, Sam.
I know that
You guys, you
sounds.
know Sam. Come on.
um,
I got you though.
yeah, you could put me in a room by myself, and I think I can be by myself for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of my quote unquote extroverted tendencies are the result of my solitude. You know, people see me in public, they do not see me by myself in private, right? And so I spend a lot of time in solitude. And yeah, that's where I'm refreshed.
Mm.
And so uh I think for me, I have like a deep appreciation for the amount of time that I could just like spend by myself without anybody, you know, checking for me, or there's not my wife or my children like, hey, where are you? Or hey, come out. Um, so yeah, that's one
Yeah.
thing that's huge for me
Yeah.
is that alone time, whenever I want, whether it's, you know, in the morning or in the evening or after work. That's something that I think I will I will miss for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
No, that's real, bro.
Hmm.
And I think it's interesting. You mentioned this idea of like alone time and having time to yourself.
Hmm.
And I feel like one of the things that people struggle with, men struggle with a lot, is in this season of singleness, there's a fine line between alone time and like healthy, like almost like loneliness
Hmm.
versus isolation,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And I think that a lot of guys end up actually isolating.
Hmm.
And so do you think that, like, let's be real, that's not an easy thing to go through, right? So do you think there that is an issue in society today or in the men that you see today, this issue of beyond like healthy, intentional alone time, this feeling of isolation where it's like, okay, I don't have a person, I'm quote unquote failing in some ways. And so you like almost remove yourself even from the communities that are important to you.
Hmm.
Have you noticed that to be an issue? And if so, do you think that this like common theme or perspective of, suffering in silence, especially for guys,
Hmm.
contributes further to people not discussing this openly?
Sure. I think, yeah, I think there's definitely a correlation there. If I'm understanding you correctly, the notion that, you know, I've been pursuing different women and it's not working out. And so as a result, maybe there's feelings of, you know, like questioning your worth, questioning your
Yeah.
value, um,
And then you just isolate completely.
and just isolating completely. Yes. Even that, yes, I think that's definitely an issue. And I think that's definitely a problem that can lead to other more
Hmm.
serious problems. And again, I think that's why it's so important for there to be a band of brothers together. Um, I think the wiles of the enemy are exacerbated when you are by yourself.
Yeah.
When you're, oh, I want to say there's a difference between aloneness and isolation, right? I
Hmm.
think aloneness, there's intentionality.
Yeah.
Isolation is maybe involuntary, or you're pulling yourself away from community for maybe negative, psychologically negative
Yeah.
motivations, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, life hits, and there's times where you can pursue someone and it doesn't work out, and maybe that's not a good feeling, right? And so it's
Hmm.
like, man, like this is really taking a hit on my sense of just worth or value. And I think in times like that, I think it's important to really have brothers around you
Yeah.
who fear God, who love God,
Yeah.
who have a healthy perspective of women and a
Mm.
healthy perspective of men. You don't want to be around people who have an unhealthy perspective of the opposite sex or the same sex,
Yeah.
for that matter, because that can take you down a dark hole as well. And so I think if you fear God, and you're a meditator of the scriptures, you will see people, or you'll be more aligned in seeing people the way that God sees them,
Mm.
right? And so uh, to feel no hate, or to feel no just no negative feelings towards um, a woman who's turned you down, or vice versa. I think that's one sign that a work is has been going on inside you,
Yeah.
right?
Good.
Because yeah, when your sense of self is not finding is not requiring an extension on someone else's acceptance of you, I think that is one indication that God is fulfilling something deep down inside.
And you're
That makes sense.
secure
There's a secure, that's the
in your
perfect word. There's a
identity.
security. That is a big indication of a security in your identity when you can express your desire for someone, they turn it down, and it doesn't reach deep down inside, and you have no ill will or negative attitude or nothing negative to say about them to
Yes.
anybody.
Yeah, it shouldn't change perspective of them, and it
Hmm.
shouldn't also change your perspective of yourself.
Absolutely.
And this is something I say to some of my friends is like, you're not entitled to anyone's yes,
Yes.
right? You
That, yeah, yes. Yes. Absolutely.
you got a lot. I can see you got more to say there for
Yeah.
sure. And it's something we'll talk about more in our kind of focused conversation on dating.
Sure, sure.
But it's real, right? You're not entitled to someone's yes, and there's also like a reason that you asked that person and didn't ask someone else, right? Like
Hmm.
they're not entitled to your asking them out either if you're not interested, right? And
Sure.
so it's like one of those things where you're confident in who God has made you to be,
Hmm.
you're secure in who God has called you to be,
Hmm.
and then you see what happens, right?
For
You like
sure.
you take that step intentionally.
Hmm.
You talked a lot about your season, your time of quiet time that you
Hmm.
take, time for yourself, right?
Hmm.
And I know you're someone who reads a lot, and a lot of your formation has happened through those quiet moments.
Hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about um, what are some of those like for you, like those key moments of formation that have been happening in the silence or in the quiet moments for you, and how do you measure um, growth at this stage? Someone who obviously like knows a lot of the word, has been developed and taught the word and things like that. How do you continue to grow yourself in this season and see um, God continuing to work and reveal new things to you in the quiet
Hmm.
moments?
Um, First and foremost, I think a relationship with the scriptures,
Mm,
um, I think is first and foremost. And even to that, I'd want to say a lot of people know a lot about what the Bible doesn't say,
yeah,
and sometimes it can exceed what they do know the Bible does say,
yeah.
right? And so it's important, if your ability to perceive truth comes from your familiarity with error,
Hmm.
I think you're wrongly oriented. Um, I think your ability to perceive error has to come from your familiarity with truth. And so, really, and I say that to say there's so many uh, just YouTube stuff and supplements out there where it's just like telling you everything the Bible doesn't say, as opposed to having your own relationship with what the Bible does say.
Hmm.
And so, first and foremost, studying the scriptures, reading the Bible. For me, there doesn't have to be like, I don't have any like unique way that I read it. I start at Genesis and I just go, I usually start at Genesis and in Matthew, and I'll just read a few chapters from the Old and the New, and then reread and reread and reread. And as you grow, I think your ability to perceive,
Mm,
deeper things, uh, that begins to occur. And so, reading books has also been huge for me.
yeah.
Reading books has been very unique for me because the reason why I started reading books was from a very painful experience that I had.
Hmm.
And I heard a quote years ago that I never forgot. And anything you refuse to learn from people, you will learn from pain.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, as a result of that, I started reading voraciously. And as I started reading, I started realizing how much I loved reading. I was really enjoying what I was learning, how much I was learning. I became amazed at how ignorant I was and how many things I didn't know.
Mm,
So for me, books have always been the opportunity to have a conversation with someone that's 30 years ahead of you, 40 years ahead of you. And the format of the dialogue is you're strictly listening and someone speaking.
yeah.
And I think that is the format of the wise person that we read about in the scriptures, particularly in the book of Proverbs. The wise person's greatest asset is their ability to listen wisely
Mm,
as opposed to speaking wisely,
yeah, yeah.
ironically. And so, um, man, like the Lord has really spoken to me, and there's been huge insights that have come to me from reading books from other people, and so yeah, that's been a huge thing for me. I think for me, the indication for me of the alignment is the security.
Hmm.
Uh, with the security, I would say like confidence.
Hmm.
And my experience with confidence is my experience with confidence has been again an inner silence. That inner silence meaning there's not the voice of, or there's not the loud voice of ego or the voice of I need you to respond to me in a certain way for me to feel uh, an aspect of validity within myself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, there's no screaming of ego. There's no requirement of validation. You need to respond to me in this kind of way. And so, yeah, there's just like a inner silence. There's an inner stillness.
Mm.
And, I believe very firmly that confidence is not the belief that, for example, the woman will definitely say yes to you. I think confidence is to not be deterred in the midst of their acceptance or rejection of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I'm good either way.
yeah, your self-esteem doesn't fluctuate with the acceptance or the rejection of other
Yeah.
people. And I think I think confidence, that is a big sign of confidence, right?
Yeah.
Because even Jesus was rejected by people, right? Obviously not in the same regard, but
Yeah.
he offered people himself and he was rejected all the time. And obviously that had no bearing whatsoever on his identity or his inner security, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think one of the biggest aspects of transformation that will occur is again your security,
Yeah.
the sense of peace and joy and gladness. You feel independent of anything that's happening extrinsic to you.
Yeah. And I think to what you're saying, and this is really good, Sam, I heard it said once, if you live for people's acceptance, you die by their
Yes,
rejection, right?
yes,
And so if we are living for like either way, off of like what people are saying to us,
hmm
there's no inner security within us.
hmm
It's all external validation.
yeah,
And the more that you allow God to form you in the quiet place,
hmm
right? We did a couple episodes on hidden seasons earlier
hmm
in the podcast with Gideon. Um, and there's a lot that God can do in the hidden season because the noise is all removed, right? You're away from it all, and so it's just you and God.
yeah,
And so there are things He can work in you, there are things He can work out of you,
hmm
right? There's character that develops, maybe there's bad habits that fall away,
hmm
and there is consistency that grows, and also a level of reliance
hmm
on the Lord,
yeah,
right? Like
absolutely,
you stop feeling like that you can do it on your own
hmm
because maybe you were in a place where you had nothing else and no one else,
hmm
right? And so those quiet seasons, those hidden seasons, those single seasons can do a lot for us.
hmm
And a lot of what you're talking about reminds me of one word, which is um, rooted. How
yeah,
can we be rooted in the season that we're in so that whatever comes about in life, whatever seasons we go in and out of as men, we can stay firmly, our feet are firmly planted on the rock, right?
hmm
And the foundation of Christ.
hmm
And there's like an acrostic that we developed to think through this, the kind of rooted framework. And so each letter kind of represents a different thing.
okay,
And so when we're in a single season, when we're stewarding this season, hopefully we're doing it well. Hopefully this framework is something that can serve as a way to evaluate, like what we were talking about earlier.
hmm
How effectively am I stewarding this season?
hmm
And so first is, R, which is rooting our identity in Christ.
yes,
How do we make sure that, like you said, we have this security in who we are in the Lord,
hmm
not in, oh, this person said yes or no to me, or not in our accolades or our money or whatever. Because sometimes if we don't get that affirmation from a woman, we look for it in other ways to make ourselves feel better.
hmm
At least I'm getting paid well. At
hmm
least I drive a nice car,
hmm
right? At least I
hmm
live in a nice neighborhood,
hmm
whatever. And those things, while they can be good and beneficial to us, the root of them, if it's to serve our own like identity and like take away our insecurity somewhere else, that's not healthy. So it's
hmm
important for us to be rooted in our identity
absolutely,
in Christ,
absolutely,
right? And then, oh, the next thing we need to do is own our emotional health,
hmm
right? There is a lot of struggle that men face
hmm
um, in terms of maybe traumas they had as kids,
hmm
traumas they had in past relationships.
hmm
Um, pain that they haven't dealt with,
Hmm.
especially as men trying to feel like, oh, this isn't a big deal.
Hmm.
I don't have to process this. I just brush it off, right? So we need to own our emotional health, right? Whether that is talking to a friend, talking to a brother, getting, therapy if you need it.
Sure.
I think that that's also an important area
Hmm.
in terms of our emotional health. And I'm curious for you, is this something that you see guys do enough of in terms of like dealing with whatever emotional baggage they might have in their single season, or do you think that's something that needs to come to the forefront more?
I think it definitely needs to come to the forefront more for men.
Yeah.
Women are definitely more inclined to initiate going to a therapist or going to a marriage counselor.
Mm.
And yeah, I think for a lot of men, maybe there's a stigma on getting the help that they need, uh, or getting, going to therapy. I think those things are huge for men. A man's mental health, his spiritual health, his emotional health
Hmm.
are imperative to the family unit, to society. So yeah, I think, thankfully in our generation now, going to therapy is a lot more destigmatized in
Yeah.
comparison to previous
Yes.
generations.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, if anybody was going to therapy or
Yeah.
seeing a
The
therapist,
problem.
yeah, it was like, oh,
Pray for them.
there's something egregious
Yeah.
happening with you, right?
Absolutely.
And so that made it harder for people to get the help they needed, without feeling ostracized or rejected or frowned upon. So yeah, definitely, I think, um, that's a charge that we need to be more diligent on and more consistent with for men, is getting the help that we need, whether it's spiritual, mental, psychological, emotional, and a lot of times just all together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I agree with you, and I think that it's also something that men have the opportunity to give each other the gift of emotional
mhm,
intimacy,
mhm,
right? Like I think that you've seen it, I've seen it at the retreats that we've had,
mhm,
right? Where you come into those and we haven't had a retreat yet where there weren't a lot of tears,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Which shows me that there's a lot that guys are just like holding
mhm,
inside. It's just packing
mhm,
up inside.
mhm,
That in the right space and context and environment of safety, they're willing to open up and
mhm,
almost need to release.
mhm,
And so it's just a call to me that we need to create those spaces for guys to be able
mhm,
to share,
mhm.
right? It's one thing to have a therapist and to have, those discussions with them. It's another thing to feel like, oh, I have brothers that I can hold, I can be vulnerable with.
Mhm.
And one thing I learned years ago was this idea of giving people the gift of going second.
Mhm.
So if I'm willing to share something vulnerable, right? There's no guarantee that you're going to share something,
Mhm.
but I'm giving you the gift of going second. So I've kind of opened the door
Mhm.
to that space, and
Mhm.
now hopefully you feel more comfortable in sharing, whatever's going on in your life, and it deepens the connection, right?
Sure.
It deepens the way that you're able to relate with one
Mhm.
another.
Absolutely.
So I think that owning the emotional health is that second piece in the rooted framework that's really important. And then the third thing is the second O would be ordering our life,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
have the time to get your money right, your finances right,
Mhm.
build your disciplines,
Mhm.
right? Build your physical disciplines. I know you're consistent at the gym.
Mhm.
I've gone for the last 3 days, so that's consistency for me. I'm trying to grow in that. But there's a lot that we need to do to build our own habits so that when we come into agreement with
Mhm.
somebody else, we're not creating it out of the blue,
Mhm.
right? We're not learning how to cast the vision. We're
Mhm.
not learning how to set certain habits and standards for ourselves. We've been doing it in our singleness,
Mhm.
and now we find someone who hopefully has been doing it in their singleness
Mhm.
too, and we come into partnership with them
Mhm.
there, right? And we're able to align and connect with them. And then T, and love to get your thoughts here, is we need to start training for future responsibility,
Mhm.
right? Okay, you want to lead a household, but do you lead your own life well, right? Do you know how to cast, like we said, vision for yourself? Do you know how to lead in developing and being consistent in your own habits?
Mhm.
So we also need to start training for whatever that future thing is that we want. We
Mhm.
shouldn't expect that we don't do any work, there's someone God presents, and then it's just going to happen all of a sudden,
Mhm.
right? So I'm curious, for you, how do you think about that piece of training ourselves, building those habits now that will, only help us in the future?
Sure. There's a verse in Ephesians 5 that I thought was so fascinating. in reference to the husband and the wife.
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but it said, no man ever hated his wife. No man ever hated his wife who loved himself.
Hmm.
And so the love that you express towards your wife will be in conjunction with the love that you have for yourself.
Hmm.
And I think it's one aspect of emotional health. I think it's impossible to love someone beyond your level of emotional health. I think that your emotional maturity or immaturity will create a cap or a ceiling on your ability to express love beyond that point.
Hmm.
And so for example, Jesus at one point said, um, love your brothers as you love yourself.
Yeah.
And so it was in accordance to something that was going on inside you. And then later on, he changed it. The external expression altered based on something that happened differently inside. So at one point, he was like, love your brother as yourself. And then later on, he said, love your brother as I have loved you. That's another level.
Yeah.
And so I think when inner transformation occurs, there's a enhancement in expression outwardly,
Yeah.
right? But there has to be, as you're able to love the Lord more, receive more of his love, and some things get worked out inside you, you're able to express that love in a more kind of healthy way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that, when it comes down to your emotional health, your spiritual health, I think so much of that revolves around that inner transformation. And that I think it all comes back down to that time with God and that transformation that occurs with God. I love that verse, the encounter that Saul had with Jesus in the air. And what was so fascinating about that encounter was, Saul of Tarsus, he wasn't going around and arresting Christians because he hated God. That wasn't his motivation was not an anti-Christ one or an anti-God one, right? He wasn't doing this because I hate God. He was doing that because he loved God. And so he wanted to serve God and he wanted to help God. And what was so fascinating is when the God that he thought he was serving appeared to him, the first thing he said, Nati, was, "Who are you?" And I thought that was so fascinating. And so, there is a big distinction between serving God and serving at your church, and these things are imperative, but it's futile to serve a God you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so the reason I point that out is because, again, a lot of our transformation is going to come out of the internal work and getting to know him. If you go to the gym today and you don't feel anything, or if you eat a healthy meal, you may not feel anything. But the feelings, yeah, but the feelings are irrelevant, right? Eating healthy is not going to consult your emotions for it to work, And so same thing with God, when you're spending time with God, you may feel something, you may not feel something, but the feelings are irrelevant. You're because your spirit doesn't consult your emotions on whether it can grow or not. If you're spending time with God, the transformation will occur. And for me, what I look at is how I deal with conflict. That's a huge thing. And when it comes to how I deal with conflict, I'm only counting conflict in a context in which I feel a way and the other person feels a way. So for example, let's say I say something about your shoes facetiously and you feel a way and you come to me. There is no ill will whatsoever. I have no skin in the game when it comes to that. Yes. Hey, Nati, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. My apologies. But if it's something deeper where I actually feel a way and you feel a way, how I resolve conflict in situations like that, I think really gets to show me to me, because I think outside of conflict, I think conflict is one of the biggest gauges on where you are in terms of your emotional maturity or immaturity. I loved that book. Goodness, what was it called? Emotionally mature spirituality.
Healthy spirituality.
Emotionally mature spirituality.
Healthy spirituality.
Yes.
Yeah. Good book.
Yes, and so even with that, I just, again, very much so, the aspect of conflict is huge.
Yeah. And it talks about there's an iceberg analogy in there, and it talks about how like 80% of the iceberg, or maybe even more, is underwater.
Hmm.
So you don't actually see it, right? And so only the 20% is visible. And what we're talking about, the inner work that we're doing, that's what's going to help melt that stuff
Hmm.
underwater, right?
Hmm.
That's what's going to actually make that conflict, dissolve or lessen from
Hmm.
where it was
Hmm.
before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that the last couple of points on this kind of rooted framework, we've talked about rooting ourselves, our identity in Christ, right? We've talked about owning our emotional health, ordering our life, making sure that we're training for future responsibility. Then the last two are one, we have to think about engaging our community
Hmm.
well, which we
Hmm.
talked about, right? Have brothers that you go to, get connected hopefully with a men's ministry.
Hmm.
Um, find some mentors in your life, right?
Hmm.
People older than you that you can submit to. I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of struggle with submission in our society.
Hmm.
And so find some people that you can sit under, right? I've been
Hmm.
very blessed to have great mentors that I can go to and ask questions and request advice and
Hmm.
get their insights on.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we do all this and then we have to date with discernment,
Hmm.
right? And we'll talk more about what that really looks like
Yeah.
in our kind of second part of this discussion.
Yeah.
But maybe to close this out, the last thing I'll ask you is, Sam, in your own journey, how did you stop waiting for life to start? In a way, I think sometimes people in their singleness think life starts once I find a person. So
Hmm.
how did you change that mindset if you ever had it? And how are you thinking about living in your purpose while single? How does that season look for you? How does that mindset look? And what encouragement maybe would you have for guys that are kind of thinking about that?
Sure. I think marriage is a beautiful blessing and a beautiful reward.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the sole purpose for life. Um, I think I think everything has to revolve around your relationship with God and your purpose, even when it comes to the person that you choose to marry.
yeah,
I think all of that has to consult with um, your alignment with God and what He's calling you to do. And so, anytime that we see our purpose revolving around a relationship, I think we're wrongly oriented and we'll be very deeply frustrated and disappointed.
yeah,
And so, again, there has to be that alignment of uh, God, what He's called you to do, and then the people He's called you to be with, including the person that you're going to marry. And so I think, yeah, if you're correctly oriented and seeking Him for what He's called you to do, I think there's such a deep fulfillment in that. Um, God is not boring.
mm,
God is not boring, and I feel like if there is a sense of boredom, I feel like we're not doing it right. So I think there's an adventure and there's a contentment and a fulfillment. And
yeah,
again, I come back to a deep peace and gladness when we are seeking after God and have a relationship with Him and are walking in alignment with Him,
yeah,
uh, and just following in that trajectory. That sense of peace and that sense of stillness within
mm,
will rid us of any kind of distractions or external distractions, um, or feeling as though I'm missing out on this or I'm missing out on that. And so when God does bring that person for you, I think that you will be the greatest benefit, you know, to that woman and to that context that you now have in your life,
yeah,
And so to get something that's in God's hand without having a proper relationship with the person
mm,
is going to lead to disappointment,
absolutely,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, I think again, what I was saying earlier, if you'll seek His face, you won't miss what's in His hand,
yeah.
So,
Love that. No,
yeah.
I think that's so powerful, Sam, and I think that, what you're sharing hopefully is an encouragement to a lot of guys. I know it's an encouragement to me to think about how do we use this season well?
Hmm.
Um, how do we see the benefit in it?
Hmm.
And also, like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Like,
Hmm.
you can ask God, right? Ask God, He'll reveal things to you slowly.
Absolutely.
And also, experience and circumstance will reveal things to you.
Hmm.
Like, you'll see, oh, maybe I handled 2 years ago, I wouldn't have handled this conflict this way,
For sure.
right? Okay, I see some maturity here.
Hmm.
Oh, I see some growth,
Hmm.
right? 2 years ago, and then you look at it now and you're like, yeah, I wasn't ready for a relationship 2 years ago. I would have had a
Hmm.
lot of trouble with that.
Hmm.
And so we see through experience, through time
Yes.
passing, right? God reveals to us, through the things that we encounter and through
Hmm.
things that have to happen
Hmm.
sometimes,
Yeah.
what he was trying to work in us.
Hmm.
And later on, right, I imagine we'll be grateful that, oh God, thank you for working that in me
Hmm.
on my own. I could
Hmm.
figure out my mess on my own
Yeah.
before you brought me into agreement with somebody else.
Yeah. Where now they have to deal
Yeah.
with that as
And then I
well.
have to deal with the disappointment of disappointing them and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that this has been such a powerful conversation, bro. I think that it's a reminder for us to think about how to steward our singleness well,
Hmm.
to reframe for some people this idea that singleness is not a gap. It's
Hmm.
actually a gift in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for us to have a training ground
Hmm.
where we develop the habits, the perspectives, and the mindset that would be one that would help us to lead well in the future,
Yeah.
and set us up for dating. And so,
For sure.
thank you for the conversation, bro.
Absolutely.
This
It's
has
been
been
a
a lot of
pleasure.
fun. I'm looking
Appreciate you,
forward
Nati.
to the second part of this. And if you're someone that listened to this and enjoyed the conversation, please share it with a brother. It's something that we're hoping will bless you, allow you to really see God's face through it, and serve as an encouragement to you. So, thanks so much for joining us on Unshakable Pursuit. Sam, thanks again for being here,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you guys soon.